Hi, and welcome to Steps to Strides with me, Connor Ratcliffe, and we're back in the garage gym today looking at some potential exercises for balance and proprioception. Today's exercises are more dynamic, so we're looking at compass point reaches and hopping exercises. So let's take a look at them. Now with our compass point exercise, where we're looking at reaches, the nice thing with this is that it can be quite modifiable. So if we want to add challenge to this, we can add more compass points. If we want to make it easier, you might just go forward and back to begin with. And typically the progression with this is distance. So you're looking to reach further forward and reach further back. And then, as I say, we can start to add additional compass points to this, so we can reach out to the side, and make this a little bit more challenging. So there's starting to add a bit of a dynamic element to this, which is why it's usually a progression from our static exercises that we will have seen in our single limb stance, progressions, regressions. Now, similar to that video, if you want to add additional challenge to this, then we can start to disrupt the vestibular system or the visual system. But when we're doing dynamic movement, that does make it quite a lot more challenging. If we then add in head tilt movement at the same time as dynamic reaching. Obviously, to disrupt visual system, we can do it with our eyes shut, which again makes it a whole lot harder to perform, but can just about, in forward back at least. Probably not going to try the frontal plane left to right or east west right now. So that's our first variation of dynamic single limb stance. Our second one is our hopping, which again I would typically consider to be a progression from this. So if you want to train landing mechanics and landing stability, which is useful in runners, it's useful in lots of other sports, netball, basketball, football, anything where there's short, sharp change of direction and jumping landing mechanics involved, then hopping's a really good progression to work towards. Now, again, you've got quite a bit of variation and inbuilt progression with this, and it all depends on who you're dealing with and what you want your end therapeutic aim to be. So we can look at a few different considerations around this, and again, the progressions. So to begin with, we might consider whether or not we want ipsilateral to contralateral or ipsilateral, which is a fancy way of saying, do we want to take off on one leg and land on the other, or do we want to take off on one leg and land on the same leg? Now, there's kind of small pros and cons to both of these. If I'm dealing with runners, typically I'll do ipsilateral, contralateral, because it mimics the action. If you really just wanted to focus on training one side, and perhaps if you had marked asymmetry, then doing ipsilateral is useful. So take off on the same leg, land on the same leg. Now, when we consider our hopping exercises, we might just do this as I just did, kind of statically, so on the spot. And what we don't want is to be too bouncy. So this isn't kind of initiating stretch shortening and elastic potential storage and release like our pogo exercises does. What this is to do is to build stability. So what we need to cue is jump, land, stabilize. Jump, land, stabilize. We're not jumping, because it kind of trains a slightly different effect and outcome. So we're gonna take off, land, try and stabilize, take off, land, stabilize. Now, just as in our reaching exercises, we can start to progress this through compass points. So we can jump forward, we can jump, land backwards, or again, we can go out to the sides. And typically there's a bit more frontal plane demand and stability demand when we do that. If you do have quite high level athletes who have got lots of change of direction involved, then you can take off, turn, land. So we can look at take off, 90-degree turn, land. Take off on left, turn, land on right. And that adds a big transverse plane rotational force to this, then stability demand. So again, makes it a bit harder, and to progress this further, you can increase height, you can increase distance, and if you don't want the rotational force, you can just work in frontal plane. So I'm going to take off on right, land on left, and the opposite, stop, stabilise. And typically, you'll just do this for reps. So you might work around a compass point, or we might go, if we want to be more focused in frontal plane, just reps left to right. And that's today's exercise, looking at single limb reaches and hops with compass point progressions.